It's just going to be, it's going to be expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. You had kind of brought up, values in terms of some of other Camaros, like pace car edition ones. We had talked a little bit about the Corvette and what they have done. It seems like the Corvette every year or every big anniversary, 10th anniversary, 20th anniversary, 40th anniversary, they do these editions, right? And they're not, they're limited production, but like say the 2004 Z28, they made 2,500 of them. So that's still a pretty good chunk. And when you talk about the car specifically, they also made Z28s that weren't collector editions, that weren't the anniversary. And both cars were basically the same thing. You had a different paint job, different livery of interior on the inside that was commemorative, but the actual performance aspects of the car were basically identical. So when you talk about which one is going to be worth more, you're talking about maybe $1,000, $2,000 if you're comparing a car that's going to be, like mileage and all the same components.
So if somebody has a, 19 or 2002 Camaro Indy 500 pace car, and somebody else has a 2002, that's exactly the same, but doesn't say Indy 500 pace car on it or whatever. The value is not going to be that much different.
No, not really. Maybe a little bit. There might be some, value to a person buying it because they want that over the other one. But it's not much.
Really?
Yeah.
I would think it'd make a big difference.
A big difference? No, I don't think so. When you talk about some of the
few thousand,
Yeah, a few thousand, maybe. But there are cars like the 2014, 2015 Camaro Z28, which was very limited production. It used the same LS motor as the Corvette Z06, and that was a pretty awesome car, very limited production. I think those are going to be worth some big bucks. So they're already starting to creep up a lot for low mileage examples. And low mileage is kind of, as we talked about with the Teslas, as we've talked about with so many other cars, that's the biggest indicator for value on a lot of these cars. You find one with, 2,000, 3,000 miles and people just want them because it's like buying a new car again.
Really?
Yeah. For all the reasons that you and I talk about how you hate tech on this and you don't like what they've done on that, you get into some of these old cars that are highly desirable and someone can get in it. It's like they bought it just from the dealer. That's really desirable to people.
Wow. Okay. So that's a big deal. I didn't know that the mileage was that big of a deal for people versus just how good the shape the car is in.
Yeah, I people really look for mileage when they're trying to buy a car for collecting, and I put that in air quotes. Maybe the listeners can't see that, but when you're looking at, am I going to make some money on this car when I can sell it later? I think mileage is one of the biggest indicators.
Okay, all right, mileage. We got mileage and things like that. So, all right, we look at mileage, and then we look at the availability of it, or just how many of them are out there.
Yeah.
I mean, just like,
and then,
and
then we're going to go to quality. We're going to look at the car itself and see how it's been kept and stored and the miles that have been put on it. Are there any scrapes to the rims? That's a big knock to some of these cars. The chin splitter, a lot of these performance cars are really low down, going over dips and bumps and whatnot. They get scrapes. So that's a thing a lot of people look for in these vehicles. And then, the general maintenance, like you and I say, a car that's 20 years old, you should have, even with 2,000 miles, you should have changed the oil at least 4 or 5 times. You should have, flushed the brakes, done a couple maintenance things. And when people are looking at all the service records for these cars, they want to see that sort of thing.
Okay. Because I know you're right. You should have changed oil at least once a year or every other year. That's a big deal.
Yeah, if you're not driving it, I think every other year is okay.
Yeah, because that's what I do on my Jeep. I don't put that many on. You put 100 miles a year on it, but I do change the oil. Okay, so we'll start looking at that and looking at the availability because, like, a lot of people are looking for like a C5 Corvette. We were talking about that. That's a really good investment car right now.
Yeah. It's a good investment car, and it's a fun car to drive.
Yeah, Miatas would be really good, except they're hard to find right now.
Especially low mileage and decent examples. A lot of them just kind of get beat up as daily commuter cars after so many years.
Yeah, and that would make a big difference. All right. Sorry. Anything else? Any tip for this week?
Any tips for this week? There are a lot of cars. People always want to, this is the car I have to have, and you don't always have to jump on the first deal you see. There's always going to be another one. You can always find what you're looking for. You don't have to overreact and say, I've been looking for this for so long and I got to buy it now.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I hate to say that, but it's really true. You held out for your dune buggy, and you held out and you held out and you held out, and finally found the one that you wanted, exactly what you wanted.
I mean, I think the longer you look, you start getting more educated on what's out there. Sometimes you go, I should have got that one. But, more often than not, you end up being really happy with the purchase you made because you made a very educated decision.
Well, now it's summertime. This is the time to buy, or this is the time to sell. Wintertime is the time to buy. You're right. So this would be the time to sell, especially convertible. So we'll do that. All right, folks. That would be a really fun thing. Don't forget, you can catch the show as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Audio Boom, SportsMapRadio.com. Also, don't forget they have an app on SportsMap.
Located in Applewood Estates in Boardman Township, the Applewood Swim and Tennis Club offers a pleasant family environment. Choose a membership that meets your needs and enjoy a relaxing venue that includes not only swimming for the family, but also youth activities such as competitive swimming, tennis, and more. Enjoy the friendly atmosphere all summer long with the staff and members of the Applewood Swim and Tennis Club. For more information, go to applewoodswimandtennis.com or call 330-953-2833.
So why do teenagers play high school sports?
My reason why is a sense of purpose.
My reason why is to inspire others.
One reason student athletes seldom mention is to get an athletic scholarship. They know that only 2% of all high school athletes are awarded a sports scholarship. So why do they play?
My reason why is friendship.
Tell us your reason using the hashtag #MyReasonWhy.
This message presented by the NFHS and the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
This is Everett Fitzhugh, the radio voice of the NHL Seattle Kraken, and you're listening to the home of the Youngstown Phantoms, Western Reserve Radio.
Non-customer said, my air conditioner broke and I had to spend $1,900 to fix it. Jeff, a customer, wrote, my air conditioner broke and I got a new one at no out-of-pocket cost. Mary, a former non-customer, wrote, my heating system stopped running. I had to spend $3,000 to get a new one. Lisa, a customer, wrote, my heater stopped working. I got it fixed at no out-of-pocket cost. For about $1 a day, you can have all the major appliances and systems in your home guaranteed fixed or replaced with HSC's home warranty coverage. Call now, and the first month is free. If the lines are busy, please call back. 800-814-5615. 800-814-5615. That's 800-814-5615. 800-814-5615.
Wake up call! If you are on your way to college, I don't know if this is relevant anymore, but I remember when I was going through my college orientation, the guy that was sort of leading the freshmen gave us 3 things of advice. He said, 1, get your backpack, buy it new if you want, who cares, but give it to the dog for like a week because nobody goes to school into college with a new backpack. 2, before day 1, walk around this school and know exactly where all your classes are, know exactly where you're headed. And then the 3rd thing he said, take your Letterman jacket and give it to your girlfriend or your parents, stuff it in the... Nobody gives a crap that you kicked the game-winning field goal or hit the home run that won the championship or you scored 28 points in the title game. So leave all that stuff at home and don't ever bring it up again. And by the way, make sure you put pasta water in your sauce. It makes it taste good.
And don't forget the sunscreen.
The advice of the class of 2020.
Wake up call with Tony B and Ron Culver. Weekday mornings from 9 to noon Eastern.
First Name Sports with Greg Frank.
Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers is your 2023 NBA MVP. It was going to be a real shame if Joel Embiid's entire career went without winning this thing at least once. He had been knocking on the door, and Embiid, after back-to-back runners-up, got over the hump last night. Embiid was amazing all season long. It was certainly his time. And so he needed his moment, and he got his moment last night. Good for him.
First Name Sports, weekday afternoons from 2 to 4 Eastern.
If you're missing the Cash In with Jason Page, then you're missing this.
Not to get all geeky, but his
get geeky, please.
A lot of his underlying stats, like barrel rate and average exit velocity, they all looked great last year. Well, it was kind of there we go. All right. I think you were setting me up the entire time. I'm done.
They're all right. Can I do a little ASMR?
I mean, if you are going to start that OnlyFans, I think that could go well.
In play.
Expected ERA.
Expected wins above replacement. Oh, that's great. Nothing turns me on more than added balls in play.
Expected WOBA.
The Cash In, weeknights at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific on Sports Map Radio.
Sports Kings with Mean Gene.
Devontae Adams is making it clear he and the Raiders front office are not on the same page. They just don't see eye to eye on the expectations for this year. What is Devontae Adams doing, and how is this going to impact Jimmy Garoppolo and what they're going to try to do this year? For a wide receiver, to me, it sounds like, okay, well, yeah, if you're not throwing me the damn ball, this ain't going to work.
Sports Kings, weekday afternoons from 4 to 6 Eastern.
You're listening to WRDB, Western Reserve Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, Warren, Salem, and around the world.
During the fall and winter, grilling season never ends, and Gessler Propane is your local supplier that makes sure you get your hard-earned money's worth. Why go to gas exchanges to pay higher prices for tanks not filled to capacity? Gessler Propane makes sure you're prepared for year-round grilling with 100% filled tanks at a reasonable cost. See Bob Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 3 at Gessler Propane, 702 Youngstown Poland Road, Struthers, or call 330-755-9119. Gessler Propane. They got gas.
Mill Creek Golf Course is the Valley's leader for golfing fun with a practice range, short game area, and hole 55 bar and grill all on site. Mill Creek Golf Course features a friendly PGA professional staff available for instruction, along with 36 challenging holes designed by the legendary Donald Ross. Don't forget family fun night golf on Fridays and Saturdays for just $25. For details and tee times, call 330-740-7112 or go online to millcreekmetroparks.org.
Mill Creek Golf Course has been the Valley's leader for golfing fun since 1928. It features 36 challenging holes designed by the legendary Donald Ross and was voted a top 30 municipal facility by Golf Week in 2012. The Mill Creek Golf Shop is a certified Callaway Golf custom fitting center and it is stocked with your favorite golf apparel and accessories. Mill Creek Golf Course is now booking tee times for this year's golf season. Please call us at 330-740-7112 or online at millcreekmetroparks.org.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
It's time to kick back and listen to the Sports Page with your host, Pat Lucia, right here on Western Reserve Radio. You can call the show at 330-707-4202 and tell everyone what's on your mind in the wonderful world of sports. Now, here's your host, Pat Lucia.
Saturday morning Sports Page. Back from last week's little vacation. 330-707-4202. Get in, talk sports. I'm Pat Lucia. Dave Clark joining me this morning. We do the Saturday morning sports page from Gessler Propane Studios here in Struthers, Ohio. And Dave Clark, obviously, a lot to get to today. Kind of all over the board. It's just I feel like one of those days where we could go so many different directions. There's a lot kind of going on. Dalvin Cook released Minnesota NFL news. We're going to DeAndre Hopkins. Where is he going to land? We could look at the over-under for the NFL. Also NBA, obviously the big story. Last night's win. Denver Nuggets beat the Miami Heat, for those who missed the game or didn't stay up, maybe 108-95. Very impressive win. This Denver Nugget team is a very, very good basketball team, and a lot of different weapons on that team that just unbelievable players. Aaron Gordon had led the Denver Nuggets in scoring, but he had a great game. Aaron Gordon did, but also Bruce Brown coming off that bench for the Denver Nuggets. I mean, he kind of put the dagger in the Miami Heat's heart in the fourth quarter with those 3-point shots and the shots he made. And Aaron Gordon played unbelievable too. Bruce Brown had 21 points, and I believe Aaron Gordon did lead the Denver Nuggets, surprisingly, with 27 points. The Joker had 23 points, and Jamal Murray had 15. But Jamal Murray had 12 assists.
Right.
Joker went out in the fourth quarter with 5 fouls, but the team did not blink an eye.
Mm-hmm.
I think he went out when they were 10 points up, and by the time he came back in, they were 9 points up. So their best player on the team, maybe the best player in the NBA, this team did not miss a beat. What this just basically mean is now it's 3-1 Denver, and they go back to Denver for game 5, and obviously Denver needs to win one more game to win it. Miami's technically not out of it, and it's funny, this Miami team is the type of team, if you don't think they can do it, they can do it. Yeah. I'm not saying there's only one team in the NBA Finals ever to come back from 3-1 and win it, and that was the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers led by LeBron James.
Yeah, and he's not out there.
And LeBron's not there.
I don't see him. I don't see Jordan. I don't see any of those Magic, Bird. So it'll be over, I think. Now, maybe they can squeeze out a 6 game. It's possible. Right. It is very possible, because we always said, even back in other series, the Heat may not match up when you look at the player personnel to other teams, but the heart, tenacity, and grit gets them through a lot of times. But it's going to be hard to get through great teams in a 7-game series. Any good team is going to probably beat them as long as they're mentally tough, and that's what I thought would happen with Miami and Boston. I do believe Boston was the better team, but they are not mentally tough. They don't have the grit that Miami Heat has, and that's why you don't see teams like that or the Philadelphia 76ers go, because I really believe those two teams would have gave Denver some problems if they were in the finals. They did it during the regular season. Great matchups, they could do it, but playing against Miami, they just don't have enough firepower. And I guess, and with Denver not being that real physical team, Boston and Philly can play against that on a consistent basis, because it doesn't take a lot of the mental part of the game. But you've seen against Miami with physicality, grit, and stuff, they just fell apart. Boston couldn't do anything with them, and that's the problem with the East, is that you just don't have nobody with that. If Miami put maybe another superstar on that team, they can really lead them. I think they would be a major problem for teams. They get one more guy, and but as of right now. I just see Denver too talented on a roll now. I mean, like you said though, I'm going to follow what you said because I do believe that when you think that they can't do it, you never know. But I really believe Denver. This is the year to finally get their NBA championship.
First one.
Yep.
And the only other time they were in an NBA Finals was take that back. They were never in an NBA final. Right. They were in an ABA final back in 1976. They lost to Dr. J and the Nets. The New Jersey Nets beat them in 1976, which also happened to be the last year the ABA was in existence because they merged and Denver and New Jersey went over to the NBA after, and so did the Indiana Pacers.
Right. Yeah.
Was the other, and then I have to do my research, but I believe there was, I think the ABA, they took 4 teams back then.
Yeah, I would because it was the Spurs from over there.
Spurs.
That was it, right?
They took the Spurs, the Pacers, the Nets, the Nuggets. Yeah, I have to look. I think that was it. They did not take. Surprisingly, people thought they should have taken the Kentucky Colonels, but they did not.
Yeah, and that was a strong team.
Yes,
at that time, people might not remember the Kentucky Colonels. Boy, man, does that bring that a little goosebump? That brings back some serious memory. That was a great league. It's just funny, and people probably say, "What in the world are you talking about?" But ABA, same as we have talked about the AFL, those 2 leagues like that, one in football, one in basketball, great leagues.
Here were the teams in the 76 ABA. It was the Nuggets, who actually they did the league standings. The Nuggets were had the best record that year, followed by the Nets, the Spurs, the Kentucky Colonels, the Indiana Pacers, the Spirit of St. Louis.
Yeah, remember that.
Marvin Barnes was on that team.
Oh, and he was a great player.
He was an unbelievable player. Virginia Squires, Utah Stars, and the San Diego Sails.
Oh, my.
I
almost forgot about them.
That was 9. There were 9 teams in the ABA, and the teams that they ultimately took, as the 4 we mentioned, they took the Spurs, San Antonio Spurs, New York Nets, Denver Nuggets, and the Indiana Pacers. And unfortunately, to a lot of people's surprise, everybody thought they should take the Kentucky Colonels, but they did not.
Yeah.
But you're right. That was a team, the Gold Kentucky Colonels, had some great players in their own right.
Yes, they did.
And that was a great team to watch. Louis Dampier, Bird Everett, Artis Gilmore, Travis Grant, Caldwell Jones. I'm just looking at some of the players. It just Maurice Lucas, unbelievable. You get talking about the old ABA for the old people like us that remember it quite vividly.
Well, you see those names you rattled off, Pat, and people say, "Well, who's these guys?" Just look up NBA Hall of Fame and you'll see.
Yeah,
these was great. We talking about ABA. These is guys that made it to the NBA.
They were. Caldwell Jones was a great player. Went to Albany State. And, obviously Artis Gilmore and Louis Dampier, they were some great players in the day back then.
Young Maurice Lucas.
And Maurice Lucas, who went to Marquette, played for Ally McGuire, and then ultimately ended up with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yes.
And then another great player. Rest in peace, Maurice Lucas.
Yeah.
But Artis Gilmore was so, like, he was 7'2", looked like he was about 7'5". That big afro.
Yeah. Quiet giant.
The
quiet giant.
That's it.
What I used to call him.
Everyone, the players that always loved playing with him. Good guy, great player, and Mello is, quiet giant was a nice way to put it. Yeah. And he was a great player for in the ABA, and then ultimately an NBA player.
Mm-hmm.
But I love talking sometimes about the old ABA teams. They had some great player. Roger Brown, the late Roger Brown, who played. He was the one that got in trouble with Connie Hawkins because they took a car ride from, I guess, Jack Molinas back then.
Right.
And now they were tarred and feathered for life in college basketball because of that, and had to fight. Connie Hawkins had to ultimately get a lawyer and fight his way into the NBA. He was a great ABA player and a great NBA player. But Artis Gilmore was not in there. But Roger Brown and Connie Hawkins were kind of marred at the hip there as far as trying to get back into the NBA. Roger Brown ultimately got in when the Pacers merged with and then he was off the banned list.
Yeah.
Poor Roger and poor Connie for all that they had to go through because of they took a car ride. That was it.
Yep. That's it. Not they did anything else.
No.
Just they happened to be with this guy.
They happened to be, granted,
Yeah. Now, we know the situation behind Molinas, but it's just sad that they weren't caught in any kind of wrongdoings or anything just because they took their car ride.
Allegedly, he was associated
with
him by a car ride.
Yes.
If they don't take that car ride.
Yep.
And those poor guys are still, what do you mean? This guy offered us a ride. We in New York. Okay, we took a ride. Yeah, all right. That's it. But that's it. That's all that they needed to do to be banned from the NBA. Two great players in their own right. Connie Hawkins also has recently passed.
Yeah.
But they were watching Connie Hawkins. He was the playground player out of New York City. That was just again, both of them were actually out of New York City, I believe. And they were both great high school players. And went on to obviously had great basketball careers. But ABA, when you get talking about the ABA, it's so easy to talk about some of the great players and how they played in, and how they kind of worked their way into the ABA and how great they were and how that league was so kind of ahead of its time. The 3-point shot. How they had the red, white, and blue ball. It would kind of float in the air when they shot it.
Yeah, that's what
the rotation.
Yep, you can see it all. Yep, still remember that league so vividly. I mean, and it was like you said, it was a great league to watch.
Right.
It was. It really was. So, and it's sad how it happened, but you wish they could take both some teams. And I used to like teams back even further. They were more talented then, though, but Virginia Squires was a tough team.
That's where Dr. J actually started.
And he played with, I think they both played in both places. I think it was Darnell Hillman with them and at the Squires, or I know Larry Keenan was.
Larry Keenan.
But I know they was at the Nets. So I don't know if they played at the Squires too.
George Irvine and Julius Irving. Yeah, that I think it was the 70. Look this up, but that's that one Virginia Squire team they could score 150 a night.
I know. And it's so funny. We talk about all the great players, all the great scorers. And the one guy that always stuck in my mind from the ABA and was a great NBA player too was the Iceman and George Gervin. This guy, people don't remember when Michael Jordan broke his foot in his rookie season. George Gervin had already been retired from the NBA for about, I think, 3 years, 2 or 3 years. And he was an assistant coach for the Chicago Bulls. And they was trying to get a replacement for Jordan. And if people remember that year, in Jordan's rookie year, George Gervin said, I'll come out of retirement and play for the Bulls in place of Jordan. I don't know if you remember that. Jordan broke his foot.
Right.
George Gervin played in that season.
Oh, did he?
He played
He
for the
came out of
Bulls.
retirement.
He came out of retirement and played. And he was still scoring like he was before after he had, the guy was almost an unstoppable player, for sure. 6'8", 6'9", wiry, smooth shot, but he'll take you to the basket and finger roll, like he said he loves to do. He'll dunk on you too, but he'll finger roll you to death.
Here you go. speaking of that, you do have a very good memory, Dave Clark. 1972, 1973 Virginia Squire roster. Just to name it, Julius Erving, George Gervin, George Irvine, Neil Johnston. I think he played Johnson. Goose Sliggin. I remember Goose Sliggin. He was one of my favorite players. I guess the name Goose was like,
Yeah.
and he was like 6'7", 210. They had Willie Sojourner, who was the center. He was like his first year. They had a guy named Fatty Taylor, who, by the way, played for Dodge City Community College, LaSalle. Dave Twarzik, who ultimately became a Portland Trailblazer, and I believe won a title with the Trailblazers.
He did, with Lucas.
With Lucas, he was a rookie back then. And they had a guy, Bill Franklin, I watched. He played for Purdue. He was a center for Purdue. He was a pretty good college player. He got in the ABA, and I don't know if he could do much of the pros, but he's a very good college player. But I remember Irvine, Gervin, and Julius Erving on that team, and they could literally light up that scoreboard.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Listen to that.
Those guys could score.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could sit there and they would win games 144 to 138, those kind of games. Wild, just, who had, just guys up and down, shoot the ball.
People loved the league.
It was a great league to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And you were, like I said, I was in high school back then. I just loved to watch the ABA on CBS on Saturdays. They had those games on. And I just loved those players.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, I think the one guy who was was Willie Simpson. I think he played for Denver. I have to look that guy up.
That name sounds familiar.
But again, the ABA, I know Denver now, obviously looking like they're at least going to win a title.
Yeah.
But when you really look at the teams, we rattled off those teams.
Mm-hmm.
The Indiana Pacers have not won an NBA title.
No.
Neither have the Nets. The Spurs have had a lot of success winning NBA titles.
Mm-hmm.
So the Nuggets would be only the second NBA team to win a title in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't that something? And that's something that's probably not talked about a lot.
No.
But they may bring it up. But I'm sure if Denver wins, they will probably bring that up. The two only former ABA teams to win an NBA championship. And it's something, after all these years, only one of those teams have been successful to be able to win one. Have they had the chance to be on the verge? Yes, the Pacers. I think who did they lose to? Was it the Lakers? I believe
they lost to the Lakers in 2000
with Shaq and
with
Kobe.
Shaq and Kobe.
Right. So that
that might have been their
chance.
That might have been their basically only time.
Yeah, I believe so.
That was their only time they got into an NBA final was then.
Yep.
With Reggie Miller.
Yep. Mark Jackson, Byron Scott. Those teams back then, and they were a tough team, but it was just too much. Lakers just too much for them.
Yeah, I think the player that I was referring to, it was Ralph Simpson.
Ralph, okay.
Yeah. He was the player. He played for the Nuggets back then.
Okay.
And I think he broke in, and he was a 6'5" guard out of Michigan State. Yeah. Pretty good shooting guard. But that's what I remember with the ABA. They just remember. The other player that was good for Denver back then was a guy named Byron Beck.
Okay.
He was 6'9". He was a center. He's kind of one of those they were like physical ball players.
Right.
But he would come in off the bench, rebound, tough guy.
Well, let me ask you a question. I can't remember, but Thompson did play for Denver the ABA. Was he ever in the ABA?
Yes, David Thompson.
Right,
he was in 1976. He was the rookie of the year in the ABA.
Okay.
He was on the team that lost to Dr. J in the ABA finals. He was on the Denver Nuggets.
Okay, that's what.
And he was actually the rookie of the year that year. and David Thompson, who obviously North Carolina State beat UCLA in the semifinal in 1974, winning an NCAA championship and breaking that UCLA string of titles. And then ultimately he went on and he was drafted by the Nuggets and played out there. I remember that because I remember getting the Sports Illustrated and they were talking about the 75, 76. It was like the preseason and they had the ABA in there and they had David Thompson out in his uniform and it was like he's basically in his shorts and his t-shirt the end with the Nuggets and there's snow behind him and he's like there's the mountain of snow and he's got the ball and he's got like a smile and he goes, this is the new face of the ABA, David Thompson, and he was the rookie of the year that year. David Thompson for the
great player.
And he was a player. Remember, he had the 42-inch vertical leap that everybody was talking about. That was something. Now that's nothing, but back then, that was like David Thompson was kind of a freak of nature with the 42-inch vertical leap, and he could jump out of the gym. And they used to do the alley-oop to him.
I remember in that NCAA game that he went up so high, went over the back of somebody. Remember, came down his head.
Yeah, it hurt. Yep, he came down on the head against Pittsburgh.
Okay,
I think it was the semifinals that he hit. It was a regional final. He hit his head. He went up. He came down. Sorry, hit his head. He had like a bandage wrapped around his head. But he came back and played from that miracle. How you saw it and you thought, oh my God. When you saw that injury, it was unbelievable because you thought, my God, this poor guy, is he going to be okay?
Yep, I remember that.
And I remember watching that. And then he got up, they put a bandage around his head, and he was sitting on the bench. And then he ended up playing the next, I believe that they won that was the finals regional. And then he ultimately played against UCLA. And then they went on to beat Marquette in the finals. They did not play UCLA in the finals.
Right.
But they beat him in double overtime in the semifinal, which will go down as probably one of the classic great games of all time. Classic games of all time in college basketball was UCLA upsetting. Although I don't know if they were technically favored because UCLA beat NC State in the beginning of that season. Significantly, the big win, Walton and UCLA beat NC State that year in, I think it was like December they played, and because NC State was getting all that prop because the year before NC State was undefeated but could not play in the NCAA tournament because of recruiting violations, and they had to sit out and they could not play and they went undefeated.
But they gave somebody some bag
They
of
probably
chips.
gave somebody a bag of chips and a hamburger.
Yeah.
And that's probably what got them in trouble. And that's why they had to sit out the entire tournament.
Yeah, with undefeated.
Because somebody got a handshake and a bag of chips in the handshake and maybe a $50 bill. Oh. Even though Joby Hall was known, I hate to digress, but Joby Hall, that old saying, talking about 50, benefits. But years ago when Bird came in to the league, Rick Roby was playing for the Celtics. And it was the 81 Celtics that won the title and beat the Houston Rockets that year. Bird was in his second year.
Okay.
And Roby was on that team. So Joby Hall came into the locker room to, shake Roby's hand and congratulate him that they won an NBA title. And that was the infamous comment that Bird made to Roby, laughed at him, said, "Hey, Rick, that's probably the first time that there wasn't a $50 bill in that handshake that Coach Joby Hall didn't give you that $50 bill because now you're making money." But back then, and Roby laughed. He thought that was funny. Knowing Joby Hall, he probably laughed with it because he knew it. They knew it all was true.
Right.
But back then, that's kind of where.
Oh, that's where it was at.
That's where it was at. But I do digress. But I guess, again, NC State could not play that year, and it would have been the 73 year because they were deemed ineligible and they were undefeated.
Yep.
And some people believe that was a great team in itself too. Yep. And it's sad because they think the 73 team could have competed against UCLA in the tournament, and maybe they could have beat them too. Or
Right.
it was that's something you would want to watch.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you get the results of the 74, it
Right.
lets you know that yes, this would have been something we'd love
Right.
to watch. And it would have been a something because they probably would have met just like it happened 2 years in a row. So
Yeah, you could have had some great. The reality is, with that team, that 72-73 NC State team, again, being undefeated and not having the chance to go, but also when you think about it, and the team that they had the same team: Tom Burleson, David Thompson, Monty Tao, Tim Stoddard. That was the same team that won it
mm-hmm.
in 73-74. And the only sad part is they were 27-0. They finished first in the NCAA or ACC. They finished first in the ACC. They actually were They were ranked second in the final AP poll. So they were the second behind UCLA.
Right. And who was coaching them then?
Norm Sloan.
Sloan. Yep.
And then
Yep.
Sloan coached them the following year and won the title.
Yep.
But everybody always saw it back then. That was the year that UCLA kind of didn't have, realistically, in their Final Four, they didn't really have any competition in the Final Four.
Yeah.
They just absolutely mauled Memphis State.
Yeah.
And one could only wonder if it was NC State they had to play.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Saturday Morning Sports Page will come back after a quick timeout.
Sandrock Concrete specializes in all types of concrete: driveways, sidewalks, basements, and garages. We also do stamp-colored concrete in many different designs. We do interior and exterior stonework, regular brick and block work. Sandrock Concrete is fully insured. Call Jerry Sandrock at 330-506-0013 for an estimate. Also find them on Facebook at Sandrock Concrete LLC. Sandrock Concrete, where you deal with the owner all the time.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all gotta see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Let's be real. The odds of a high school athlete getting a college scholarship and making it to the pros are pretty slim. Don't get me wrong. It's okay to dream of becoming a pro athlete, even a famous one. But that's not why I play. My reason why? I love the competition.
My reason why is community.
My reason why is leadership.
My reason why is to challenge myself.
My reason why is love for the game.
And hey, if we don't make it to the pros or onto the cover of Sports Illustrated, that's okay. Because there's every reason to believe we'll excel in something even bigger than sports. We'll excel in life.
There are lots of great reasons to play high school sports. Tell us your reason using the hashtag #MyReasonWhy.
This message presented by the NFHS and the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
Saturday morning sports page, Pat Lucia, Dave Clark. Second quarter. We're in the second quarter of the show, Dave Clark.
Yep.
330-707-4202. When we got in that little time machine and went back a few years.
Oh, yeah.
But it's always a lot of fun. Just so the 1972-1973 NC State team, David Thompson, who was then a sophomore, averaged 27, almost 25 points a game, 8 rebounds. Tom Burlinson, who was 7'4", a junior, averaged 18 a game and 12 rebounds. Monty Tao, this short 5'7" point guard, he was really a pretty good player. Liked to watch Monty Tao play. He averaged 10 points, but he was a great assist, great playmaker. But that NC State team, also they had a player by the name of Tim Stoddard on that team, 6'7", who also ended up being a pretty decent, and he played a pitcher. He was a pitcher for the relief pitcher for the Yankees, the Tigers, and had a pretty good Major League Baseball career, all in all, Tim Stoddard. But they had some great, would have been a good what if, if NC State would have played UCLA, if they would have been in that Final Four instead of, say, like a Memphis State.
Yeah.
Because I remember back then, Providence played Memphis in the semifinal, and they had Marvin Barnes playing and Ernie DeGrorio were on that team, and they were really beating Memphis State.
Yeah.
They were dominating Memphis State. Barnes sprains the ankle, carry him off the court, and then Memphis State came back and won the game. And, Providence couldn't hold them off, and they were dominating Memphis State.
Right. Yep.
Barnes was having a great job. I always said if Marvin Barnes was healthy, had they played UCLA in the final, would it have been a better final? Because it wasn't a real competitive final. No, Memphis State was just no match. It was a bad matchup.
Right. But Providence, I think, would have gave him a little bit more.
With a healthy Marvin Barnes,
Yeah.
I would have loved to see a healthy Marvin Barnes and a Bill Walton go at it.
Yeah.
Because you would have had two very good, skilled big men that would have gone after it. It would have been I think it could have been a really good matchup.
Yep.
But the 73 game, Walton had maybe the greatest college game ever in NCAA history. And bottom line was, it was no match. It wasn't a great game.
Yep. Yep.
A lot of what ifs in 72, 73.
Yep. And when you go back in any part of history, there is a lot of what ifs.
A lot of what ifs. Yeah,
all through it. So
again, if NC State was not on probation for whatever they did wrong, which we don't know what they did wrong.
Yeah, never heard what it was.
I don't know.
I don't even remember hearing what it was. They may have back then.
Who knows?
But it was very low key.
Right.
That's all you know that they were.
Right.
Even
though UCLA was getting all the benefits they wanted from Papa Bear Gilbert all back then and all those years, Papa Bear Gilbert was basically taking care of all the UCLA players with, quote, extra benefits.
Just look the other way.
They totally looked the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did it, and they knew it was happening. They didn't want to know it happened.
Right. You got to keep the land of sunshine out there in LA real visible in these tournaments.
No, they weren't going to go after John Wooden and the great UCLA Bruins back then.
Yeah.
Other stuff going on out there. Obviously, we talked about like Dalvin Cook has been released by Minnesota. It was a money situation.
Right.
Contract that they really didn't want to pay. But he had 4 1,000-yard seasons. I guess the question I have is, Dalvin Cook is I believe 28 years old. Okay. 27. He will be 28 this year. they release him after 6 season. I mean, do you think that you think the career is on the downslide? I mean, I think this does say one thing. It does basically tell you that to some large extent, the NFL has kind of devalued the running back.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
To some extent.
Yeah. Especially during the regular season. You see them more used, except, you got your outliers like your Tennessee. They're going to use Henry. They're going to, and that's where they establish their game behind the running game and play action with Derrick Henry. But for the most part, when you take the whole scope of the NFL, is this something that I think is devalued, especially during the regular season. Now, when they get into postseason, they run the ball a lot more. It goes back to almost our traditional football that we have watched. But that's when you see that only during the playoffs in that drive to the Super Bowl. But during the season, I think it's devalued. Now, I don't know if I want to. I'll just say this. Maybe I won't put this out on air right now, but I will say there have been some things that have came up. I guess investigated about nothing, no drug use or anything like that, or nothing for Dalvin Cook, but some other things. And I don't know if that has something to do with his release, but we'll see in the coming weeks if team right away. I know he wants, and he has hinted that he wants to play for hometown Miami Dolphins.
Right.
So, now we done heard of other teams that really would want him, Dallas and a couple other, but that's where he would like to play is in Miami. So we'll see if that happens. But back in the day, Pat, 27-year-old running back, 28-year who has not shown like wear and tear that, yes, he's been nicked up a few times, but he still showed he could catch the football, run, get in the open field. You're not catching him. All those things that you done seen, run with power, run with speed, agility, everything there with Dalvin Cook. And they allow him to walk. So it shows you how they definitely, the NFL back is devalued. And once they get their use out of you, you show some signs of slowing down sometimes, and that's it. But he hasn't shown that. So that's what makes me wonder, is there anything else going on besides that? Or it's just devalued. They need the money for something else.
The value, money.
Yeah, 'cause I think he's going to be making, what, 13, 14
Yeah,
million?
I think it was 14. His stats, by the way, just if you're wondering, the last 4 years, he's gained over 1,000 yards. Last year, 2022, he had 264 carries, 1,173 yards. He averaged 4.4 a carry yard, 8 touchdowns. He had 39 catches. And then the prior year, he had 1,159 yards, almost identical to 2022. Same year, 6 touchdowns, 34 catches, 4.7 average. And then 2020 was his best year, where he had 1,557 yards on 312 carries, averaging 5 yards a pop, a carry, 16 touchdowns and 44 catches.
Right.
I mean, his last 4 years, he's been over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
So,
and they used him less. You look at the carries went down. He started Madison, the other back, who's got some talent. They try to keep their guys fresh, so they split time. I can't say split time. It's maybe 60-40 or 65-35, mainly Dalvin, but he got a lot more rest, which actually keeps him healthy and fresh. So it's a mystery.
According to what I've read, it said, question, why are the Vikings cutting Dalvin Cook? According to the little snippet I've read, it was a money move, primarily a money move. He was due $10.4 million in a base salary and $11.9 million in 2024, and then $12.9 million the following year, 2025. So they cut him, and I think they didn't really take much of it. I think they only took a $2 million dead cap hit.
Yep.
So the cap hit wasn't anything significant. I think the reality is they didn't want to pay their running back $10 million,
Right.
11 million, almost 12 million, and then 13 million the next three years. They didn't want to pay him that money.
Yeah, and you also got to look at the fact that Justin Jefferson's new contract will be coming up, and they definitely got to sign him. They can't let him go.
No, you would not think.
You would think that, and I also think they know that this is the year that they got to make a choice on Kirk Cousins. What do they do after this? So they got to have money for a quarterback, but it's just kind of weird. Well, there was nobody. That's how you know it's devalued. They couldn't trade him.
No,
they couldn't trade him. And somebody pick up that $10 million.
They didn't want.
It's devalued big time. So they wouldn't take the guy.
Same thing would happen with DeAndre Hopkins, wide receiver. Nobody really wanted that contract,
right?
So they released him.
Mm-hmm.
So now Hopkins, though, is older.
Right, he's 31.
31.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he only played 19 games out of the last 2 years of 34. Mm-hmm. So he has shown maybe a little wear tear. So maybe teams were, although a great talent, the injury, the age, teams are pulling back now. A lot of question: where's he going to end up in the NFL? He's been talking to the Tennessee Titans, and then there was another team he was also shopping him around. So, although if I was Kirk Cousins, can't be happy because you're taking Dalvin Cook away from him. I'm a quarterback. I'm not real happy losing my running back like Dalvin Cook because it takes a lot of pressure off me.
Yeah.
When Dalvin Cook can get 5 yards a pop or 4 point whatever a pop when you hand the ball off to him, I'm looking at a lot of 2nd 6, 2nd 5, 3rd and 1s. I'm not looking at a lot of 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10 type of down. Yeah. So a lot of pressure is off me.
Yeah,
because the down count is in my favor, especially again with Dalvin Cook in the backfield, the 2nd and 5. Teams don't know, are you going to hand off or are you going to throw it? So, and then Dalvin Cook's also proved he catches the ball out of the backfield. So, again, that's a great weapon to have. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I would be knocking on, the GM's door and saying, "Why don't you guys make a play for Dalvin Cook?" Because I know their running back is coming off an ACL. Reese, I can't.
Oh, yeah.
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 So bottom line is, if I'm the Jets, I'm Aaron Rodgers, I know you got your wide receivers, but boy, I would love to have Dalvin Cook in my backfield. Because bottom line is, I still think obviously he'll be 28. He still has something left in that tank.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't know why the back's name is escaping me, but from Iowa State. But he was a rookie. He could do it all too. Catch. And they said his recovery has been great. So
it's Breece Hall.
Oh yeah, that guy.
Breece Hall is coming right.
Do it all.
He's only 22.
Yeah,
he was a rookie out of Iowa State. He was having an unbelievable year. He blew out the knee, the ACL, but he's had a great rehab. He's only 22.
Which always helps.
That helps a lot when you got that age on your favor. So he's on the beginning of the career, get over that ACL. But if I was the Jets, Rodgers, I would love to have Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And now they got quite a few backs, and that's the thing. I don't think they
probably aren't going to go after.
They got Carter.
Yeah, I got Michael Carter, Coleman, Nick Baldwin. This was as of 2022. They do have some good running backs.
Yeah, they got some. Their running back room is really good. So
they probably won't do that.
Yeah.
I think they've got all the running back. Like I said, you've got, when you look at their running backs, they're all like a fairly young group.
Yeah,
so
they're young.
I think the Jets aren't going to do anything quite like that.
Right. But I do understand what you're saying when you just think of established weapon, and you put a guy like that in there.
I'm a Giant fan. I think the Giants won't, but they should. Because they have Saquon.
Right.
But boy, if I could have Dalvin Cook and Saquon Barkley.
I know.
Now Saquon Barkley, I know that's he's got the tender out there for the franchise tag, which I don't believe he had signed yet.
Right, he hasn't signed it.
So I don't know what's going to happen there.
Same thing with Josh Jacobs. They haven't signed.
So
they got until I think July.
Right. Yeah, they can carry that out till July.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting with these running backs, what kind of deal Cook can get out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll also interesting with, on the other end, DeAndre Hopkins, what kind of deal will he be able to go and what team will sign him?
Yeah, that's, we'll find out if he's going to go somewhere. Now, he has said, it was rumors that he's going to talk with Houston, his former team, and wouldn't mind going back down there. He liked Coach Ryan's and different things like that. But it all depends on if he wants to be a part of a team. It's rebuilding.
It's a rebuild.
And do he wants to be a part of that at where his age is at right now? He's not old. 31 is not old at all, especially a receiver. You can continue to play. He had some injuries, but he's also was suspended.
Right. He was,
Yeah,
he had the steroid, the PEDs.
Yeah. So, I mean, those type of things wasn't an injury he was just suspended for. So, he came back last year after that suspension and still had a decent.
Yeah, he could still play.
Yeah, he could still play.
He could still get open, he's DeAndre Hopkins. He could make plays.
Yeah. So will he be able to go somewhere and if he's looking for a Super Bowl, then those are the teams you put on there that you think may have a opportunity to get there. Now they do talk about the Chiefs real quietly is seeking them. So, and you can see them doing. They got all young guys that they'll throw a veteran in there like that. They'll find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, if the reality is if he goes to the Chiefs, you've got Kelsey being the weapon, but then if you throw DeAndre Hopkins in that mix, with the other young receivers, if you're a defense, who do you cover?
Yep.
I mean, that's a nightmare because you've got Hopkins on that team, and then you have Kelsey.
Yeah, and I mean, you done heard the rumors of him definitely at Cleveland. You done heard the rumors of him at the Dolphins too.
They said potentially he wants to go. His friend is Watson.
Right.
They've talked.
Yeah.
He says Watson says he talked to him all the time.
Yeah.
So does he make a play or does he come to Cleveland and play?
And
they got Amari Cooper, but they could definitely use DeAndre Hopkins as a number 2.
And if they were able to do that, if they can do that and keep Donovan Peoples, that's ridiculous. But I mean, and I still think, and people are the weapon. I think the hidden weapon is Elijah Moore because nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, no one is paying any attention to him.
And that guy is electric. He get the ball in his hands. Now he's not no focus. He's in the slot, so you got to try to cover him in the slot with that speed.
And if you have Hopkins lined up and then Amari Cooper,
that's
then
definitely some issues.
How do you cover those 3 guys?
Yeah.
You can't double team anybody.
No. Yes.
So now you have pretty single coverage on those 3 players.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got a problem.
Right.
Because now there's going to be, I don't know how.
I don't know what the heck you do.
I don't know, if you're a defense, what do you put together? So DeAndre Hopkins could be a big difference maker if he goes to a team like a Cleveland or a Kansas City.
Yeah.
Because he's going to a great team with great tight end wide receivers, but you throw him in the mix now with those 2 teams. I mean, he's the type of guy, you're going to have single coverage on him. That's not good if you're a defense.
Yeah. It's going to be.
So it'll be real interesting to see.
I want to see
where right now Dalvin Cook ends up.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you're figuring, if you're like a Giant fan, if you had Dalvin Cook and Saquon Barkley, That would give a lot of pressure off of Daniel Jones. I don't know if the Giants would go after DeAndre Hopkins. I think they should, but I don't know if they would. They could use him because they're a little light on the wideouts.
Right.
They might be more apt to go after DeAndre Hopkins than they would Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Because I think their need is more wide receiver. But if you're a team, I don't know how you could go wrong with either one of those guys, especially, like I said, with Dalvin Cook. He's only going to be 28. So you got to figure he's got at least 2 years. I know running backs, the only scary part with running backs, when they get to a certain age, when they have a tendency to fall off. Like all of a sudden, it's like they can't play anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just like talking history. Like going back to when the Giants had Ron Johnson. He played so hard for the New York Giants, running the ball, getting beat up and yards and tough yards. And then he hit about 28, 29, and the body was done. Eddie George was kind of the same way with Tennessee. He had a great, and then he went to Dallas, but he was done.
Right.
Like the bodies just, like they hit the wall. Like Earl Campbell kind of did that too, because all those years when he was in his prime, he would punish people,
Right.
Earl Campbell, and knock people over. And then he got to the certain age, and then he was kind of done.
Yeah. Eddie George, I definitely remember Ron Johnson. That's a throwback right there.
That's a throwback. He played for Michigan.
People don't remember how good of a receiver.
Yeah,
they used to have big receiving yards back then.
Yep.
Oh yeah, he caught many balls, and he was a workhorse.
He was.
For them.
He
Big
was
time workhorse.
He was like, I believe his numbers were like he was like 6 foot, 6'1", and like 225. But he was. I just remember watching him play.
And I remember him trying to continue. He went and I remember actually in the preseason, the Dallas Cowboys had him, Dwayne Thomas. They all was trying to make a comeback, and they released all of them. But those guys were just done. Great talent, but his body just had it. He couldn't do no more.
He was. I believe that the Giants traded for him, and he was a Cleveland Brown.
Yes, right. Yep.
And they traded and got Ron Johnson from the Cleveland Browns. He joined the Giants January of 1970, famous trade. They sent, this is back, the Giants sent Homer Jones, who was their speedy wideout, who had giant hands and could catch, and he was a big guy. He ran like a 9.3.
Yeah.
I used to have an argument with a kid growing up who was better, Homer Jones or Bob Hayes. And I always thought Homer Jones was better than Bob Hayes. And he'd say, no, Bob Hayes is better.
Yeah.
Then we get in the argument, who's faster? Go Homer Jones. No, Bob Hayes. Bullet Bob Hayes is better than Homer Jones. Me and this kid in the schoolyard would argue, who's better, Homer Jones or Ron Johnson? And obviously, I always loved not Homer Jones. I loved Homer Jones.
Yeah.
And then they traded Homer Jones to Cleveland for
Ron
Johnson, Jim Kanicki, a defensive tackle, and a linebacker named Wayne Malin. And I remember Kanicki played right away. Those guys that the Giants had, they contributed right away, but nobody contributed like Ron Johnson.
Right. Oh yeah, no way.
He had his first year. He had 1,182 yards in 1972. He had 1,000 yards. That was in a 14-game season. He was a Pro Bowler in 70 and 72, and he rushed for more than 1,000 yards each season.
Yeah, he was definitely good back then.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think, the Browns got rid of him because I thought they were loaded in the back. But I don't know if did they have Greg Pruitt yet? I don't think so.
No.
I don't know who they had
Greg
in there.
Pruitt. The Browns probably had Leroy Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sure he was there. Still.
Leroy Kelly was there.
70. This was 70.
1970.
Right? I would say Kelly definitely was still there.
January 1970. That's when they
had
traded
Kelly,
him.
Bo Scott, and all those guys.
Because that was the 69 season. After the 69 season, they
those
traded
guys.
Ron Johnson. So
Yeah,
all
Kelly,
those guys, Kelly, Bo Scott, were there with the Browns. So Ron Johnson was never really going to get to play in a Cleveland Brown uniform because of the depth chart. you're down. And obviously, Leroy Kelly, a Hall of Famer, a great running back who took over for Jim Brown.
Yeah.
Talk about running backs. And I believe Jim Brown took over Marilyn Motley. So,
yes.
again, when you look at the Cleveland Brown history of running backs, you could make the argument that I could make an argument that Marilyn Motley, Jim Brown, and Leroy Kelly, 3 were the greatest 3 running backs on one team ever. Like, no team had those great running backs like those 3.
Yeah, and missed out on one because of death.
Yes.
Just think of
that. Yes. Ernie Davis out of Syracuse, who died of leukemia at the age of 23, was one of the greatest. He was a Syracuse, drafted by the Browns. Even Jim Brown had made the comment, he's better than me, I believe, because Jim Brown watched him play and was unbelievably just shocked how great Ernie Davis was. Right. The speed and size and strength of Ernie Davis. And even
imagine if he would have been able
could you imagine if Ernie Davis was healthy, died at the age of 23 of leukemia, had he not had that disease and he played football, what he would have been in the NFL? That's a big what if. But could you imagine if Ernie Davis and Jim Brown were in the same backfield back then? Because back then they played 2 running backs.
Right, and they would have been.
Because Ernie Davis, I believe, was 1961 when he and he was from Elmira, New York. And why I know that is because I was driving through Elmira, New York one time, and there's a statue of Ernie Davis. It's in a park. There's a statue of Ernie Davis in a park in Elmira, New York. That's where he went to high school and then went on to Syracuse.
Yeah. Wow.
Saturday Morning Sports Page. It's halftime. We'll be back after a quick timeout.
Hi, it's Mark Means, host of By All Means, Tuesdays at 5, right here on Western Reserve Radio, WRDB, The Scourge.
WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio, take 1.
Behold the angry giant.
Try it again, Alberto.
Behold the angry giant.
Perfect. Good luck tonight.
Behold the angry giant.
Yay! Read me another one, Dad.
This is WWE superstar Alberto Del Rio. It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
Visit fatherhood.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Mill Creek Golf Course is the Valley's leader for golfing fun with a practice range, short game area, and hole 55 bar and grill all on site. Mill Creek Golf Course features a friendly PGA professional staff available for instruction, along with 36 challenging holes designed by the legendary Donald Ross. Don't forget family fun night golf on Fridays and Saturdays for just $25. For details and tee times, call 330-740-7112 or go online to millcreekmetroparks.org.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Western Reserve Radio is the Valley's online source for sports talk and local live events. Tune in and be a part of their live weekly shows, as well as all of the hard-hitting action of Youngstown Phantoms hockey, high school football, and the GDFL. Find them at westernreserveradio.com. Tune in and the Live 365 app to be a part of the area's sports conversation. Be sure to visit them on Facebook at Western Reserve Radio and on Twitter at WR_radio.
Saturday Morning Sports Page, Pat Lucia, Dave Clark, 330-707-4202. Before we move on from the topic, I do want to say that Ernie Davis won the Heisman Trophy. And that's the part. He was the first African-American player to win the Heisman Trophy. He was the first in 1961. He was drafted number 1 in the 1962 draft. He won the Heisman in 61. Was picked number 1 in the overall 62 draft. By the Washington team in 1961, and then they traded him to the Cleveland Browns after they drafted him. He was also drafted 2 days later by the Buffalo Bills in the old American Football League. The owner of Washington was George Preston Marshall. I don't want to go into the whole thing about he was allegedly avowed racist, and he did not want to integrate the Washington and therefore football team. And there was always this discussion about why he drafted him and traded him, yada, yada. Well, anyway, in a nutshell.
Why trade him? I mean, why draft
Why
him?
draft him if you were going to trade him? That makes no sense. Well, he figured he's the number 1. I could get more for him.
Yeah.
So that's what he was probably just thinking. But could you, to this day, imagine, we're doing a lot of what ifs this morning, but could you imagine he was drafted in 1961 or 62? He won the Heisman in 61, Ernie Davis. And it was just an unbelievable football player, what I've read and seen some clips of him running. Just could you imagine Ernie Davis in the backfield with Jim Brown? 1962, 63, 64, and 65.
Right.
5 years. Yeah. Could you imagine those guys in the same backfield?
And the thing about it might have went longer than
4
that.
years. Yeah, Brown might have not retired had he had Ernie. Yeah,
you know why? Because that Modell might have not been as belligerent on Jim Brown to get back to camp when you got this guy already
Ernie
there.
Davis.
And when you get back from your movie, come on.
Come on.
We already know what you got. So, but man.
You get into, then you get what is, could you imagine Ernie Davis and Jim Brown playing this in the 65 game against the Packers, the game they lost?
Yeah, that changed something.
Do they win that game because you've got Ernie Davis and Jim Brown? Because football, people forget, football was running the ball back then. It was a primarily run game.
Yep.
With Jim Brown running people over and Ernie Davis running by people. And could he run by them?
Yeah.
He was an unbelievable athlete and great player, but could get out in the open and go.
Mm-hmm.
Could you imagine Ernie Davis and Jim Brown in your backfield? What would you do? How would you even? You couldn't key on Jim Brown, and you couldn't key on Ernie Davis.
Right.
You couldn't do anything but pray to hope that they didn't, basically blow by you. Either Brown running right through you, or Ernie Davis just leaving your.
Well, it'd be a nightmare because if you got one back there that you're dealing with, Jim Brown, you hope that he doesn't get the ball this play.
Right.
But the problem with those two, you can't hope that Ernie Davis don't get the ball because that means Jim is getting it.
Right.
And you can't hope that Jim's not getting it because that means Ernie getting it.
And if Ernie's getting it, he's going right by it.
Yeah. It's a nightmare.
The sad part with Ernie Davis, again, and he was from Elmira, New York. They have the statue of him in Elmira, New York. But people don't realize how great a running back he was back then in Syracuse, and he followed Jim Brown because Jim Brown went to Syracuse, and then a little bit later, Ernie Davis went to Syracuse. And he was, in 1960, Syracuse Orangemen figured 7-2. They finished 7-2. It did not play in a postseason. Ernie's season year, Syracuse had an 8-3 season, but he played and he was an unbelievable back, winning a Heisman Trophy. In fact, John F. Kennedy went and met and talked to him. The president of the United States back then went and talked to Ernie Davis.
Right.
But the point on it is, if you would have seen these two together in the same backfield, what an absolute. Cleveland might have had 2 NFL titles.
Yeah.
They might have won back-to-back. Who knows? Maybe they won another title.
Yeah.
Maybe they take one of those titles away from the Packers, or in 63, Bears beat the Giants. Maybe it's the Bears playing the Browns, and the Browns would have beat the Bears. He was like Gale Sayers before Gale Sayers. Like, he was that kind of a back with the speed.
Yeah.
I think he might have been a little bit more durable than Sayers, bigger, but
Right,
he
bigger,
had the speed of a Gale Sayers.
Right.
So it's almost like to think about how great he was, but that would be like saying if you had a backfield of Jim Brown and Gale Sayers.
That's terrible too. That's a nightmare. That's just I that's just I can't just imagine.
And that's the part that, and again, had leukemia at a very young age, died at the age of 23, never made it into the NFL. He was on the roster in 62 with the Browns only as a member, but he had by then, I believe that's when he had was diagnosed with the leukemia, and then he died in 1963 at the very, very young age of 23. Mm-hmm. But that's like the what if of if you're a Cleveland Brown fan, talk about bad luck, but just think, had Ernie Davis lived and been healthy and did not get leukemia.
And it's sad to say, but think of unfortunate things from the Browns' perspective. It starts there. Because before that, great years of Jim Brown, and you go back to Otto Graham and all, some great things the Browns did through the old, what was it called, the AF, whatever it was. And then they finally became members of the NFL. Great.
Yeah, they came in.
Established program.
They came into the NFL. People need to understand the Cleveland Browns, and they got to the championship.
Like right away, wasn't it?
In 1950. The first year, I believe, they were in the NFL. They were in folks need to understand, because I know it's old, very old, go back years, but back in like 1950, the Browns were in the NFL title 6 straight years. They were in the title 6 straight years. They won it, I believe they won it in 1950. They lost it they won it, they beat the Rams in 50. They lost to the Detroit. They beat the Rams in 50, lost to the Rams in 51, lost to the Lions in 52, 53, beat the Lions in 54, and beat the Rams in 55. So that's out of 6 years. This is a new team that came in the league. 6 years they were in the NFL championship game, and they won. They were 3-3.
Right. And that's a new team into the league.
And that was a brand new team into your league.
Right. And I'm talking about they were just a great franchise. Everybody, Cleveland Brown. When the unfortunate situation with Ernie Davis, it seems like things spiraled out of control. I mean, you look at that situation happened. You see that you have the situation with Jim Brown leaving. And even before Jim Brown, the thing that, I don't know what made them get rid of Bobby Mitchell, but they did, and allowed him to go to Washington. I don't know what you're doing. But anyway.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah, and you just look at how this spiraled and continued all the way up to modern day to are we getting to the Super Bowl with Brian Sipe? You're right there on the cusp. You don't get in. On the cusp twice with Bernie Kosar. Don't get in. Just one thing after another. And it's like a curse. And, a guy said to me, it was about a couple weeks ago, he said, I'm wondering now that the great Jim Brown passed away, is something going to, not that he had anything to do with the curse, but there's something going to change for the Browns. And a switch goes on. And we see the Browns start to do something. Maybe so, but it's sad in what he was saying, because he said the great Jim Brown stayed, even though he had that blowout with Art Modell, he still was very close to the Cleveland Browns. And we know that this guy was behind that.
Especially after Modell left.
Yeah.
Brown came back.
Yeah. Because he wouldn't come.
No.
He still talked about the Cleveland Browns, but he would not be associated around them as long as Art Modell was there. When he took them guys off to Baltimore and they established their new franchise in 99, Jim Brown has been a landmark with that franchise from then
Yeah.
on. But he had nothing to do with long as Art Modell was there.
No. It was almost relatively compared, but with Yogi Berra and George Steinbrenner, after Steinbrenner fired Yogi, 85 season, Yogi wouldn't come back to the Yankees. I think then maybe many, many years later he did, but he was, he had nothing to do with the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
And again, but Brown never came back to the Browns at all until Modell sold the team. And then he was a figurehead.
Yep.
And then he was part of the Cleveland Brown organization in the football. And,
Yep.
From then on out.
And it's sad because it's
Right.
unfortunate because he should have always been a legendary mark with them all the way through. But Art Modell and his
No, I mean,
numbness.
again, I know we talked about it, a few weeks ago when Jim Brown had passed, but again, Modell got all upset because Jim Brown wanted to take he was going to miss 1 week of training camp so he could do the movie.
Yeah, 1 week.
The Dirty Dozen, 1 week.
And if
And Art was just going to keep fining him.
Yeah.
Your greatest player of all time in your,
I would have just said, okay, 1 week, okay.
1 week is fine, Jim. Take your time.
And then you have him.
Yeah, you
probably another 2, 3. See, he wasn't slowing down at the time he retired.
No, he's 29.
Yeah, and he was still
the statistics of Jim Brown are still to this day, because they only played, people need to remember, they played only 14 games. In fact, the first couple of years Jim Brown played, they only played 12 games.
That's right.
But when Jim Brown was playing, they played 14 games. This guy was going over 1,000 yards in 14 games.
Easy. Too.
Easy.
Yeah. I know.
Well, he had the one year he went 1,863 yards for 14 games.
Right.
The year he set the record that OJ ultimately broke in 73, 14 games with 2,003 yards. But you go back to Jim Brown and you could see how great a player he was.
Yep.
Now we keep throwing in, if Ernie Davis was healthy and played for the Cleveland Browns.
That's just insane.
That would have been like a Gale Sayers in your backfield because Ernie Davis was kind of like the Gale Sayers. He could run. He could outrun everybody.
Right.
And was big. He was 6'2", 210.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot bigger than Gale.
Yeah. Yeah, actually was.
Yeah,
and
he's bigger than Gale.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And he was
about
probably
that.
as fast as Gale Sayers.
Oh, yeah. And he had power.
And he had he had power. I mean, that's the thing with Ernie Davis was scary, is not only did the man have great speed, but he had unbelievable power. And with the combination of speed and power coming at you, and then again in that backfield with the Jim Brown. See, I think, not to overstate, but I think that potentially the Browns could have won. They could have, the Giants lost to the Chicago Bears 14-10-63. The Browns, I think, were in the East. The point is, if you would have had Ernie Davis and Jim Brown, I think they beat the Packers in 65 because Ernie Davis would have been in his prime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I remember Jim Brown, the great Jim Brown, with that laugh. They asked him, I forgot who it was. They asked him a question. He always used to laugh like that.
Oh, yeah. He had that. Yeah.
And he said, and they was talking about great backs that he would have loved to seen, that he think he would just admired and loved. And he said, 2 guys, Ernie Davis and Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
He said, if those guys played, those was the guys that I looked to as the same as him. And I do. If Bo Jackson just play football only, that's what Jim said too. He said, just play football only. Just concentrate on it. Say, I'm just going to be a football player. A running back. He said he don't think he'd been unstoppable. And well, you've seen it just in the little games that he played.
In the snippet of the small window of games that Bo Jackson played in.
Yes. I mean, that was like a man playing with little kids.
Yep.
And that right there showed me that was modern day Jim Brown. If people wanted to know what Jim Brown was, watch that.
Watch Bo.
And that's what it was. Throwing guys around.
Yep.
People would come up to hit him, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but I think
people jumping on his back and running. Yeah, that's what Jim used to do.
Bo Jackson almost kind of had and the speed. Like he almost had the Ernie Davis speed and the Jim Brown power. He was almost a combination of an Ernie Davis and a Jim Brown. Is how great Bo Jackson was, and he blew the hip out. And again, and the other bizarre part with Bo Jackson, you said if he would have just played football, well, if he would have stayed in baseball, he would have been a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And probably played till he was 40 years old and probably would have set how many records, who knows? Because you could tell when he was with Kansas City and he came up, he was really starting like with running. As far as fielding, he was an unbelievable outfielder, but then he was arm and run and catch the ball. He could run every ball down with that speed, but then the power, and then he was starting to the pitching. As the more he played, he was like he was getting it down as far as the hitting goes. So he would have just developed into an unbelievable hitter and would have been a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. And it was so funny.
In either sport.
Yeah. And I just looked at, I didn't know a lot about the things that Bo had did before, but Jim Brown is a guy that studies people. And he said, one of the things he did was a decathlon. And that's what Jim did. He said people didn't know that Bo Jackson did that and won it in the state like 2 years in a row. And as a freshman, they wanted to, I guess in high school, they wanted to try to keep him from not doing it. But he just dominated people from when he was 14, 15 years old. He said the same path. And that's something, And I hate it when I seen that happen to him. I said, this guy's something else. But you're right. He could have just played baseball.
He could have played baseball.
And it would have been great.
A first ballot Hall of Famer. Probably would have had a career batting average of well over, I think he would have been over 300 because his hitting would have just improved because he was so raw.
Yeah.
But you could see the development.
Quick, too.
Yeah, quick. He wasn't like, once he was figuring out once he got that home run he hit in the All-Star game to this day is, again, was it Rick Russell was throwing, threw him that ball. And I forget they were saying, and they said if he throws that ball one more time, I think Bo Jackson said he's throwing me that fastball kind of a low and away, and I was waiting on it, and he threw it again. That's when he tattooed it. And when he hit it, it just like, he said, wow, it looked good hit. And then all of a sudden, it's like deep into the center field seats.
Yeah. It took off like a rocket.
Even, was it Ronald Reagan was doing the game, and I think it was Al Michaels, or no, Vin Scully. Okay. And only thing was, they were talking, all of a sudden, Bo hits the ball, and I think it was when it hit, Reagan goes, oh my, like where it hit. Like, he probably wanted to say something else, but it was like, oh my, it's like, oh my gosh, like that ball just left the yard, and it just like, it looked like a normal fly ball, but the thing just like kept carrying.
Yeah.
And they were playing that game, and I think in Anaheim.
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, it was the Anaheim field, and it just went way, it was like way back, it was like had to be like 440 feet. And it looked like a normal fly ball, but when he hit it, it just like.
Yeah. The guy.
He was Bo Jackson. Like, you get these great players, but, you think about the Cleveland Browns. They started in the old All-American Football Conference from 46 to 49. They started in the NFL in 1950. They actually, I wanted to add, in 1956, after they beat the Rams in 55. The Giants beat the Bears in the 56, but then Cleveland went back to the NFL Finals back in 57 and lost to Detroit. So if you take, what is that, 8 years?
Yeah.
7 of the 8 years they were in the NFL Finals, and a team that just came over from another league. But that was Paul Brown, who was behind all of that.
Yeah.
And he was
another guy that was shunned away.
The NFL.
Yeah.
He had to go to Cincinnati. Well, he and Modell,
again,
that's what happened. He and Modell got into a dispute, and I think, Modell thought he had too much power. So he and Modell parted ways, and then he ultimately went down to the Cincinnati Bengals, and he started the Cincinnati Bengals. And I believe the first year for the Cincinnati Bengals was 1969.
Yeah. And he went down and purposely put their colors together.
Oh, yeah.
Just like on purpose. They said it was no doubt about it, just to get back at them. And and the colors, the similarities, and everything was something. And Paul Brown was getting back on. It's just to know that Art Modell is a part of 3 separate big time instances, situations, or something. Paul Brown, Jim Brown, and then the moving of the franchise in 98, 99 to take them to Baltimore.
Right.
This is, sometimes I used to feel sorry for Art Modell, but when you really sit back and grasp the situation, you understand why people despise him. And you can get it because, I mean, three instances like that and 2 of your big-time names in franchise history, he had something to do with them not being there any longer. It's really bad. Really bad situation for Art Modell. And he's, some people, congratulate some things about him since his past and stuff, but he's got a stain mark in Northeastern Ohio. No question about that.
Break it down. Like, okay, Paul Brown leaves basically, let's call it for what it is. I'm reading this, January 10th of 1963. Paul Brown said Modell ousted him because the owner wanted to take a more active part in actual team aspects formally assigned to me as part of my contract, i.e., Modell basically wanted to control the team, and he didn't want Paul Brown doing it.
Right. Because he was a coach and
he was a coach, GM. He did it all.
Right.
He took care of everything.
Right.
Back then, that's what a lot of teams did.
Yeah.
Coaches were GMs. They didn't have a lot of assistant coaches.
Right. Yeah.
They built the team. They put, they scouted. They had a few scouts, but they assembled teams. Like Weeb Eubank put those Colt teams together back in the 50s. People don't even know who Weeb Eubank is.
Right.
Weeb Eubank took the Colts. And I mean, you need to understand there was no internet. They had little film, and you basically built teams by bringing guys in and looking at them playing, saying, yeah, he's a keeper, he's a not. And you had to build teams. I mean, that's what they did back then, and how many hours these guys did it. And Paul Brown did that with Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
And then Modell gets rid of him and then gets rid of Jim Brown. Like when you say maybe the 3 worst things that Modell did, how he got rid of Paul Brown, got rid of Jim Brown, and he managed to basically move the team out of Cleveland.
Yeah.
It was at 95, and then they got it back in 99.
Yeah.
So he moved the team out of Cleveland over a dispute with the city on a stadium that, a lot of finger pointing both ways. But at the end of the day, that's what happened.
Right.
So there's 3 things that Art Modell did to Cleveland.
And I think, I know back when they wouldn't get the stadium in 95, I was like, why you wouldn't give this guy, let him get a stadium? But now when you look at things in retrospect,
right,
people don't even want to deal with Art Modell. I really believe that. I really believe because as soon as he was gone, they were able to get a new stadium. They were able to get
that's interesting how they were able to get a new stadium.
Yeah. I think it was just the kibosh, as they say, was on Art Modell. He was a done figure in the Cleveland area. So, I mean, all the different places he wanted to try to go build a stadium, they said no to. And they wouldn't give him the opportunity or the finances to do so. So he figured, I got to leave. He leaves. Cleveland gets a new stadium and everything. And so I really thought about it. I said, I don't think this guy, they didn't want to deal with anything with Art Modell any longer. And they was probably thinking, maybe if we do it this way, this guy just sell the team, not take one of the most historic franchises and leave town. I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen.
One thing I believe when they moved in 95, I think Tagliabue was the commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I believe he was. Paul Tagliabue told Modell You've moved the team. But you can't take the records. Can't take the name, and you can't take the records. They stay in Cleveland for the new team. Yeah, he took over in '89, and yeah, so it was Paul Tagliabue that
I like that.
said to Modell, you can't take all the records, all the history with you.
Mm-hmm.
You could move the team, but you've got to, and then you can't take the name. You can't call it the Baltimore Browns.
Right.
To call it the Baltimore Ravens. See, what I think to this day, they should have done that with the Indianapolis Colts. They should have told the Colts, you could move, they should have told Irsay, you can move the team in the middle of the night. That's your prerogative, but you can't take the records and the name.
Yep.
Make it another name. You leave all the records set by Lydell Mitchell, Johnny Unitas.
Leave it. Yep.
You know, all those, Lenny Moore, all the great Baltimore Colt players. You need to leave those in Baltimore and leave it at Baltimore.
Right.
In fact, what they should have done is say, okay, they should have told Modell, what you can do is you want to move the team to Baltimore, then you need to name it the Colts, and then you can have the records, and you would just have the Baltimore Colts back in Baltimore as, you know, they could be the old Cleveland Browns, and then let the Browns have their team, and then have the Indianapolis Colts named something else.
Right. Once they came in the league.
Yeah,
that should have never, you're absolutely right on that.
Right.
That should have never happened.
They should have just left, brought the Indian, if you wanted, Modell wanted to move the team, you got to call them the Baltimore Colts.
Yeah. That's an established franchise also.
And that was,
Wow.
And that's what they should have done. Mm-hmm. But at least they left Cleveland alone and let them keep the records and Jim Brown. Yeah. Now they have the statue of Jim Brown in Cleveland. Yeah. Saturday Morning Sports Page, fourth quarter coming up after a quick timeout.
Located in Applewood Estates in Boardman Township, the Applewood Swim and Tennis Club offers a pleasant family environment. Choose a membership that meets your needs and enjoy a relaxing venue that includes not only swimming for the family, but also youth activities such as competitive swimming, tennis, and more. Enjoy the friendly atmosphere all summer long with the staff and members of the Applewood Swim and Tennis Club. For more information, go to applewoodswimandtennis.com or call 330-953-2833.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
During the fall and winter, grilling season never ends, and Gessler Propane is your local supplier that makes sure you get your hard-earned money's worth. Why go to gas exchanges to pay higher prices for tanks not filled to capacity? Gessler Propane makes sure you're prepared for year-round grilling with 100% filled tanks at a reasonable cost. See Bob Monday through Friday, 10 to 4, and Saturday, 9 to 3 at Gessler Propane, 702 Youngstown Poland Road, Struthers, or call 330-755-9119. Gessler Propane. They got gas.
If you want to stay on top of your health, one simple thing to do
is take the pledge to go and get screened for the cancers that might affect you.
So stand up to cancer and take the pledge at GetScreenedNow.org.
It only takes a minute to take care of yourself, and nothing rhymes with org.
Talk to your doctor about your health and screenings that are right for you.
Saturday Morning Sports Page coming right back at you. 330-707-4202. Get in and talk sports. Irish Mike. I was thinking, should Irish Mike call in? We're going to be talking a little Big Ten football, but the 2024 schedule will be very interesting because that will be going over to the Big Ten. The 2024 schedule gets real interesting for the Big Ten because that's when the Pac 12, or I should say the USC and UCLA, will be joining the conference. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Like, I'm looking at it now, and it looks like Michigan's schedule, their home team, Michigan is going to have Michigan State, Maryland, Minnesota. They're going to have UCLA at home and Wisconsin home. But away, they're going to have Ohio State, Illinois, Rutgers, and USC. Ohio State is basically going to have UCLA away. They'll have Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, Northwestern, Rutgers home, UCLA, Michigan State, Minnesota, Penn State away. So bottom line is the Big 12, or I should say the Pac-12, the Pac-12 coming into the Big Ten is going to have a big impact, at least with Michigan and Ohio State in 2024. Especially Michigan's going to get to play USC and UCLA.
Yeah.
On that schedule. So that'll be an interesting schedule for them. And then obviously the Buckeyes will have at UCLA.
And that's really, I mean, I guess it still be called the Big Ten Conference.
Yep.
But 16 teams in there, correct?
Correct.
Wow.
Because they have 14 now.
Yeah.
And then there's the talk about ultimately, rumor has it, that the other two Big Ten teams that want in is that are floating out there is Oregon and Washington. So there's all these rumors that ahead that they may get those two teams at a later date. Word is, rumor has it, that's all speculation, but the word is that Washington and Oregon are obviously looking to jump ship and they want to get in. And a lot of it is because of the Big Ten TV package. These teams get over 60, 70 million from the TV contract.
Right.
And that's the reason why UCLA and USC jumped to the Big Ten. Because we've got one thing you always remember on everything, regardless of all of the extraneous bull, it's money. Always about money.
Oh, yeah.
Teams make decisions. Just follow the dollar here.
That's all you got to do.
I mean,
it's so different. Oh, that's all it is.
Roger Goodell gives a wild card game away.
Mm-hmm.
Was I believe 120 million for that wild card game that's going to be on the Peacock.
Yep.
I believe it was 120 million. Does he care that the ratings aren't going to be very good because people don't have that? No.
Yeah. Because it's not going to be.
No.
I mean, everybody doesn't have it.
No.
Now, will millions and millions sign up for Peacock? They may.
There may be
right
the hardcore fan.
Yeah. Because we're talking just that game and then drop it. I mean, if it's not something they want, but it's just money is great that we have in it, but can it ruin some other aspects of situations and circumstances for the number one people that really make this money come about? And it's the fans. Yes, merchandise and everything is there, but you really, these products are of sports is zero without the fans. I mean, if you didn't really have fans in the stands and able to come to your games and really put in it, it would be a problem. But the fans draw a lot of this, and man, and it costs for the average family to go to a game is just, you probably only could do one per year if you're just the average family. Now, if you got those funds that allow you to be a season ticket holder and take all your family and go to everything, more power to you. But that's not the average.
No. No.
of your fans. You know, they're not. They're able to come to one game, and sometimes that breaks them.
It says it's $5 a month for the Peacock if you want to have it. I stand corrected. It's $110 million. NBC paid the NFL $110 million for that one game, just one game.
And that's wild card weekend, right?
Wild card weekend. One game, wild card game. NBC paid the NFL $110 million.
And we just talked about, you know, if people get it. Yeah, probably. I mean, I had it, the Peacock, but it was like free. You just signed up.
Yeah, free when you signed up.
Now,
right.
to be a part of that, you got to pay money.
Right.
To be able to get it. Now, will I pay
$5 and then
maybe?
Cancel it after?
Yeah,
right.
Probably would, because I would like to see all the playoff games.
Right.
And then knowing that somebody else is going to follow suit. Somebody it's going to be a college something. That'll get you there.
Amazon Prime paid what, $1 billion for the Thursday night package?
Yeah. Which is, you know, the NFL honestly has to work on something they have to. They got enough smart guys in there to be able to make sure that teams don't play a Sunday and then a Thursday.
Right.
You know, have them where they're on a bye or something. They got to have a bye because you just don't get the football you want to see.
What I think is going to happen, and I'm probably going to get here sooner than later, is I believe the NFL is going to go to 18 games and have 2 bye weeks. So that's going
to solve it.
Solve your problem you brought up with the Thursday, Sunday, but they'll get to 2 bye weeks. That will now give us a 20-week season. I think what will happen is the NFL's not starting any earlier than Labor Day. They won't do it. They'll never start this season earlier. They'll just run it further out.
Yeah.
So if the NFL goes to now we're at an 18 game. Right now we're at 18 week, 17 game, but an 18 week season. If the NFL goes 18 games with 2 bye weeks, that will give you a 20-week season. I'm convinced they're going to start it when they start it, the Thursday after the of Labor Day, because I've read an article that the NFL does not want to start the season any sooner than Labor Day. What that's going to do to your season, though, is it's going to move it out by at least 2 more weeks out. That's going to project your Super Bowl to be played at probably toward the end of February.
Right. Yeah.
What's so great about that for the sports fanatic and the sports calendar is you're going to push out the NFL season now toward the end of February. That means you go right from football into college basketball. The tournaments and March Madness is right at your doorstep. So for the hardcore fan that complains about the dead week of the 2 weeks or 3 weeks leading into March Madness, you won't have it anymore.
Right.
Because now you're just going to make a nice transition from NFL football, which will now probably almost run to the 3rd or maybe the 4th week of February. Then you'll go right from there to March Madness.
Yeah. And if you keep it where you got your 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, it'll be perfectly. It'll be right at the end of the month. The last Sunday of February will be the Super Bowl.
Be the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And when that's over, the following week is the conference
tournaments for college basketball.
And that's like a mini March Madness.
Well, and
then it goes right into the regular tournament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you'll have it where everyone will get 18 games now, which no one's going to ever complain about. And you're going to just extend that football season out further toward the end of February.
Yep.
And your Super Bowl would be probably played at the last week.
And you'll hear moaning and groanings about 18 games. Oh, wow. But
no
let
one
me
will
tell you, they're going to do it. They make millions and millions of dollars. One more game, meaning somebody's going to get a little bit more rest. You get the extra bye week. They probably will maybe go from 3 preseasons to only 2.
Right, they will. Yeah, what's going to happen is they go to 2 preseason games because you're always going to have, if you ever look at the formula history of NFL, they always played 20 games. Because back when they had 14 games, they played six preseason.
Yes, they did.
So then they upped it to 16 games. Then they cut the preseason from 6 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
So you always had 20 games.
Right.
It was just what was going to be preseason and what was going to be regular season. Now what you're just going to do is when you up that 18 games, you're only going to have 2 preseason, which nobody's going to complain about because probably one of the biggest complaints with NFL, the people complain about the preseason. The games don't mean anything. You know, they play anybody. You know, you have McVay, the coach of the Rams, won't play anybody, any starter in the preseason. He's come out and said that.
Right.
So he doesn't want the injuries. So I think that at the end of the day, you're not going to get people complaining about, oh, they're not playing. We want more preseason.
Right,
No, people want less preseason.
Yeah. And you know what? And only the teams that play in the Hall of Fame game play, like now they'll play 21 games.
Right.
You know, they'll get that extra.
Right, they get the extra game.
But the thing nowadays, the preseason games, yeah, you have them for the fans to be able, but where they get the best work is now that all these teams, it used to only be a few teams that did it, but now everybody does it, is the joint practices. And they say that's where the best work comes in, is with these joint practices.
Right.
They'll match up with a team and go for an entire week of practice and then a little scrimmage type thing. And they get their best work. They find out who they want to cut, who they want to keep, and this and everything else during that, more so than the preseason games. So they won't miss a beat. They'll be having these joint practices like they're doing, probably even rev that up a little bit more, get a little bit more of that going, and just 2 preseason games. And 18. I think that's going to happen soon. I don't think it's
going to be.
I say within the next couple of years, I would think that 18th game will come into play.
Yeah, and just think about it. If Amazon's paying $1 billion, and now if you throw them another game or 2 games, however it comes out, yeah, because you're going to extend the season, you're going to get more money from them.
Right.
So that's the other thing is, I mean, you know, you rate commissioners, great commissioners. I mean, Rozelle was a great commissioner. I think David Stern was a great commissioner because what he turned the NBA from, you know, the delayed games on NBA Finals to the delay game to getting it mainstream, and he really made it a TV, but a mainstream TV game.
Mm-hmm.
Rozelle was genius because of he got the TV going, but then he also they had to share with the revenue sharing among the teams.
Right.
So, you know, the New York Giants got the same as Green Bay Packers because Green Bay Packers is a little small town.
Right.
But so those teams would all say solvent.
Mm-hmm.
And then ultimately, and he was also involved with some degree of getting the merger together because he could see that the AFL was going to drive them out of business.
Right.
And he could see that they can't continue to do this.
Right.
So they figured that out. But I don't think Goodell's a great commissioner.
Right.
He's all right.
Yeah.
But I mean, TV, it's like, you know, you're selling ice water to the people in the desert, that old saying, because the demand is so people want it so much and will pay so much money for football. And football is America's sport, like foreign, like crazy American sport.
Yeah.
Basketball and baseball are kind of on that next tier. And then you have hockey in there, but hockey's probably below them.
Right.
But baseball and basketball don't even compete with football.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's
just a fact.
Yeah. And that's why you have to look at Goodell. You would probably look at him as okay.
He's
owner.
all right.
But I would tell you, the owners look at him one of their greatest because he's actually their pincushion.
He's
for
the
them.
shield. He's their shield.
Yeah, he just goes and takes it all.
Right.
And a lot of that stuff people don't know. That is not him sometimes.
No.
But he does what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And when he comes to that part of it,
right,
I can't give it to him on that part. I don't like it, some of it.
Right.
But it is a great job that he does in that.
He makes a lot of money. I think his new deal is going to be $63 million. Goodell, and to your point, what makes him probably considered a good commissioner is in the world of the Twitter and Snapchat and the media and the internet. He's able to absorb and take a lot of hits on, the internet and those, and, Facebook, all the people slamming him from all the different media outlets, sort of to speak. He takes that hit great.
Right.
He takes, the hits, he takes the criticism. He's kind of their shield, because we know that all the owners aren't, some of these owners aren't, we'll just say they aren't the greatest guys either.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a lot of things we probably don't know that goes on. And so Goodell does a great job in doing what he needs to do, and covering the owners and taking all the hits that the owners tell him to do. And what, he says, it's my idea. No, we know it's the owner's ideas.
Yeah.
So Goodell is the one taking those hits.
Yeah, he does. And it's different things are going, Goodell, what are you doing, man?
Yeah. Right.
And I had to really sit back and look, because at one time at first,
right,
I used to, man, I can't stand this guy.
Right.
When I started to sit back in retrospect, sometimes he even has a pained look on his face about certain things, but he just go ahead and just take it.
Right.
It's part of his job. So,
well, I think the only thing I think it really got where Roger, I think, overstepped his bounds when he came in. I'm going to be the judge, jury, and
when he said that,
I'm going to be,
never did that.
That he should have never done, because he really got himself. He put himself in the league in bad spots with the discipline and going way he handled some of like the Ray Rice debacle, that he just, he first suspended him 2 games. And then once the video came out of Ray Rice punching his wife, but back then his fiance, everybody saw that, then Ray Rice basically got suspended and never played again.
Right. Right.
And then Roger looked bad on that, because he suspended the guy 2 games and then had to change his mind after the video came out.
Yeah.
People said, well, if Roger didn't say, if that video never came out, Ray Rice is playing. He would have lost 2 games, and then he plays. But after that came out, he was suspended indefinitely, or however they did it, and then nobody wanted him.
Right.
He became radioactive.
Yep. And that's why.
And, that's where Roger got in trouble, is because you said one thing and you did another.
Mm-hmm.
And then this guy's career was totally, ruined.
Yeah. Because I, like a lot of people said, well, the reason he wasn't picked up, he couldn't play anymore. And I think he probably could have played. But I think they definitely couldn't let him back in the league. There was no way.
Well, you know what it comes down to, Dave? It's like I've said this time and time again. We get into these conversations with talent. How good is your talent, and what is your what baggage are you bringing into the league?
Yeah.
And when your talent doesn't exceed your baggage, they're not going to want you.
Right.
But if your talent exceeds your baggage, they're going to sign you, because you could do more for the team.
Right.
It's like Kaepernick. Kaepernick, Farley came in with all the stuff with the kneeling and everything. He wasn't, he was good that year that he had that Tommy gun thing, but once they figured it out, he wasn't that great a quarterback. He would have been a backup. But nobody wanted to sign him, because nobody wanted to go through all of the media.
Which I think was unnecessary too, because a different kind of baggage that was
it was
really nothing he did incorrect. Wrong information.
Right. No, he didn't he didn't break a law. He didn't do anything. No, he didn't do anything like that.
And they wondered, where did he get this idea from? He got it from a soldier.
Right.
Who told him this is the proper way to, if you're going to do any type of protest, do it peacefully.
Right.
And do it this way.
And do it that way.
And okay.
Right.
He takes the idea on, and it is a peaceful protest. It's nothing violent. Nothing.
No, he didn't do anything. Right. He
kneeling.
didn't do anything wrong. Right. He didn't break a law. He didn't do anything crazy. He did a peaceful protest, a kneel.
Right.
But the back, lash.
Yeah, and it wasn't that. And I thought it was not that big a deal.
Yeah, I never
at
thought at all. But I think that
I
thought they made so much more of it than they needed to. It's just, but again, the outrage it caused evidently, and sometimes I think in some of these instances when they make a lot of it, then it like it's a snowball effect.
Yeah.
And it makes like a bigger outrage, and it just keeps, then it just becomes engulfing the media with it.
Right.
And I just think to some extent that, what he did was a protest, but at the end of the day, teams then just, Colin Kaepernick was an okay quarterback, would have been a backup, maybe a fringe starter. Nobody wanted to touch it. It was like, again, they just, because of, now, if Colin Kaepernick was as good as Aaron Rodgers, somebody would have signed him and played him. And they would have put up with all of the stuff with it,
Right.
because if he was like I said, if the players, any player that is, if the players are great players, teams will put up with that quote baggage factor, because he's bringing a lot to the he's going to really improve our team.
Yeah.
We'll look past it. But if they're an average player, I could go get a guy that's comparable that doesn't have that. So I'll just do that because that's easy.
Yeah.
And that's what I just think you ultimately see and that's just really with any team and any player, is they sit there and look at the team, at the players, whatever they've done.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ultimately decide whether or not they want to sign him and how great of a player he is.
Yeah.
And that's sad to a large extent, because you should never do that.
Yeah.
You should look at,
Yeah, and he definitely could have definitely played. It's just like Jack Tatum, because he never apologized. And when he played, people don't realize when he played in Houston that last year, he was going to go to another team, but they made sure he was out the league.
No, they didn't want him in the league
because he never apologized. And people say, well, he probably was on the downside. If I'm not mistaken, he was close to leading the league in interceptions that year. Made all pro, and was still a devastating hitter, but they wanted him out of there. You had people like Chuck Cecil, another guy that was a guy that would knock your head off. They got to get these guys out of the league. The only guy I thought that was, and this is not football though, that was at the top of his game in sports, and because he would not do no pledge to the flag, but turn away from it and pray.
Was the guy from
Mahmoud Abdul?
Yeah,
remember
the guy,
the old Chris Jackson
from LSU, from Denver.
But Mahmoud would do that, and they got him out of the NBA.
Yeah, he did.
And wasn't allowed to play, but that was a guy that was like.
He was good.
Shaq was saying he was the Steph Curry before there was a Steph Curry.
He was great.
The guy can shoot from anywhere.
Yep.
And can score at will.
Yeah, the old he went. Yeah.
He went to LSU.
Yep, LSU.
Yep. He was I think he was there when Shaq first came at LSU.
Yeah, he might have been his senior year.
Yeah, I know they played together at LSU. And he said that was one of the guys that took him under his wing was at the time was Chris Jackson. And it's sad to see guys like that, but other guys, we done seen it. We done seen guys get blackballed. So and that's what happened to Kaepernick, that's what happened to Tatum, Chuck Cecil, and on. You can go to a lot of different guys, and you'll be wondering how in the world these guys can't play again. But that's what happened. Rice.
Did you ever see the hit? That Jack Tatum hit? To my understanding,
it wasn't as violent.
It was not, and I don't believe he wasn't penalized.
No, because it wasn't. He didn't lower his head.
No,
he came across with forms and everything like
he went up.
Yeah,
Stingley went up to catch the ball, and Jack hit him
right in the
sternum where area. You've seen all the time.
Yeah, in the sternum area. That's
up
all.
In where the back sternum is.
That's all he did, coming across the middle.
He was coming across the middle, and the sad part is you've seen that hit. I mean, leading up to that hit, that was a standard hit in the NFL.
Right. Yeah. The hit by Jack Tatum in the Super Bowl on Sammy White was more vicious than it was Darryl Stingley.
To Darryl Stingley.
That was vicious, but it still was more of a standard hit then too, but it was up high. It was in the head area. You never get away with that today, but I mean, that hit was a standard hit, but violent. It was a violent hit. knocked Sammy White senseless.
No.
Stingley's was you would have never thought that would have happened to the guy on that hit. You never would have thought that.
When you saw the hit, I remember seeing that hit when it happened. And I looked at it and I thought, well, okay, that was a standard hit in the NFL back then. Guy goes up, Tatum hit him like he always hit people hard, but it was what I looked like a clean hit.
Yeah.
But it's where he hit him, and that's what obviously
got him in the wrong spot.
Got him in the wrong spot, and that basically caused his injury.
Right.
But it wasn't what you could consider a vicious hit.
Right.
Even today, that wouldn't be what I would consider
a vicious hit.
It was just where and how he hit him, and that's what obviously caused.
Look at the people didn't pay attention to this little bit of backlash after the DeMar Hamlin hit, when T. Higgins was getting a lot of backlash saying, look what you did to this guy, because he came across, caught the ball, the defender comes up to hit you. So what do? Do you stay upright, or do you lower your body?
You lower your body to take the hit.
And that's what he did.
Right.
That's normal football move. It's actually not a football move, it's an instinct.
Yeah, it's an instinct.
If I'm coming to hit you, you're gonna
take the hit. You're gonna adjust your body for the hit.
Right. And they was coming after him saying he
did
right. This.
Even
remember,
Hamlin's family came out and said, no, that's not. He didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
T. Higgins didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
They're like, quell the people. No, didn't do anything.
Oh my God.
Saturday morning sports page, Pat Lucia, Dave Clark. Do not drink, do not drive, and buckle up. Stay safe. Western Reserve Radio.
You're listening to Western Reserve Radio, WRDB, The Scourge, a part of the Sports Map Radio Network.
People been saying to your friend, get a different face, and posting on their feed, they're super ugly. The things they say to them online are cruel and they're not true. So tell